Holy crap, guys, look at that. I'm actually on time today. That's something that I'm glad is happening again, and this is Sunday Apologetics. Thank you for tuning in. Now, in my group, I made another poll, and only one person voted this time, but they voted that I talked about the atheist tactic tier list and how it is dishonest. For all of you who don't know what a tier list is, generally the best is at the top, the worst is at the bottom. So basically I'm going to start off with the good and end with what is perhaps the worst. At the very top of the tier list we have asking for evidence. There's nothing wrong with this. It's a good tactic that everyone should invoke. Being skeptical, asking questions, not believing something just because you're told to. Nothing wrong here. Let's move on. The next is probability. Probability is basically saying, well, it's quite possible, maybe even there's evidence that this could be the case, but when atheists use this, they are in fact using it simply as a scapegoat. We've all heard an atheist say, like Christopher Hitchens in his debate with Lennox, he said, what's more likely, that God actually impregnated a little Jewish girl or that a little Jewish girl told a fib? Even if you want to say Mary lied about the whole God thing to hide some affair, you can't exactly square that up with the rest of her son's life. Whenever an atheist uses probability, it's simply because, well, the evidence standpoint where they wanted to, so hey, God's unlikely, so let's apply to that now. However, is God unlikely? I've talked before about ASAP science video about can math prove God? And I think it got a little distracting at the end there because it started talking about our universe being conjured up by other more advanced humans. And I'm like, okay, well now you've gotten us into an infinite regress fallacy, but at the end of the day, it's more probable that there is a God, and then there are actually many gods, and then there is that atheism is the one true worldview. So probability is simply inconsistency and an atheist way to sidestep the evidence when it doesn't point where you want to by claiming that although there may be evidence for the other thing, it's not probable, therefore. See, just because something's probable doesn't necessarily mean that this is what happened. For example, my little brother, tends to trip over his own feet. He's still he hasn't quite got this walking thing down. So, if we have him in a room and he begins to cry and fall, if he begins to cry, we can conclude, hey, maybe he fell. If, however, we have a camera hidden somewhere and it turns out that one of my other siblings pushed him, well, there you go. That is also something that could have happened too. My evil, conniving siblings. But no, in all honesty, it is quite possible that what we view as probable is not actually what happened. Third, possibility. This is something that is truly annoying when atheists say, well, it's a possibility this happened, so let's go off of that. Simply something being a possibility does not necessarily make the case. Who was it, Christopher Hitchens, who said that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence? If you have evidence that something happened, then let's hear it. If not, then let's not hear it, because I can dismiss it on the same grounds. For example, in my debate with Waldo, when it comes to the Exodus, Waldo brought up how he doesn't believe that Joshua existed. He brought up how he doesn't believe that Joshua should be credited with building the altar. And once upon a time, some people said Merlin built Stonehenge. and they were wrong, so it's possible that Joshua, the people who credited Joshua building the altar, were wrong too. Now, I am definitely paraphrasing here. Waldo, I think, brought up some, he basically said he didn't believe that Joshua existed. But I am paraphrasing here. Ultimately, though, he didn't believe that Joshua existed, and some people miscredited Merlin with building Stonehenge. So, some people could have miscredited Joshua with building the altar. Now, ultimately, I still stick to my guns that in the event that somebody has the blueprints for something, knows what's beneath something, and generally can tell you every single aspect of that thing, I trust them to tell me who built it. I don't think that's unreasonable. But simply saying something is a possibility is not a real argument. Always demand evidence, and if they don't have evidence for it, well, they can shut up about it. Alright, the very next thing here is ignorance. We've all been here. How many times have you heard, well, the writings of Paul have different writing styles, so they're unreliable. That right there is pure ignorance. Some will even refer to it as the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's where the fact that you don't know a lot about something is what leads you to believe that you do know a lot about it. Generally, this shows an ignorance in how people in history recorded things. They could have told someone to write a note, and if you tell a bunch of other people to write down a bunch of different things, they can write it down a bunch of different ways. Just because there are certain writing patterns, or not certain writing patterns, or some writing looks like it's written differently, does not mean that it was not ordered to be written by the person that we always believe it to be written by. Scribes existed. I think it was Alexander the Great used scribes all the time. He dictated notes to them. Some he didn't. So, yes, this is simply ignorance of how something is done and then playing off that. And for a little bonus, I'll throw it in there. I call this one pulling a Matt Dillahunty. Pulling a Matt Dillahunty is basically where you say, I don't know, but I don't think you're right either. Despite the fact I have some pretty good evidence that I'm right. In his debate with Eric Hernandez, Matt Dillahunty said, I say I don't know, and saying I don't know is much more virtuous than pretending like I know. And Eric Hernandez said, well, yeah, saying you don't know, if you don't know, is more virtuous, but once you have evidence that points to a certain conclusion, I don't know is not meant to be your get out of jail free card. It's annoying because some people are like, oh, this makes me so intellectually honest. No, it just makes you stubborn. Saying I do not know is not your get out of jail free card. And at the very bottom, the lowest thing an atheist can do, the most annoying thing is, drumroll please, simply insulting somebody. Yeah, it's pretty low, they're insulting somebody. Again, we see this with Matt Dillahunty, who somehow, despite all this, has got a really good following. In his debate with David Wood, Matt Dillahunty, when David Wood said that he was a philosopher, Matt Dillahunty was like, well, I question that. And David Wood said, I have a PhD in philosophy. And Matt Dillahunty was like, and? That's why I don't do in-person debates. I can't promise you there would not have been a fight right there. But, nonetheless, you see what happened here. Matt Dillahunty said, I doubt you're a philosopher. David Wood said, I have a PhD in philosophy. And a philosopher is literally anybody who studies philosophy, especially at an academic level. If David Wood has studied philosophy to the highest academic level, well then suck it up, Grandpa. He is, in fact, a philosopher. Just because you want to get crappy about it now and use your sarcastic insults like I said, this is why I hesitate on doing in-person debates. There could have been a fight right there. Same thing with Matt Dillahunty's best friend on Raw. The second Eric Hernandez called him on his bullcrap. What did he do? I win! Like, well, you win the Darwin Award if that makes you feel any better. Ultimately, yeah, that was the Atheist Tactic tier list. I gotta prepare for date night. Like, subscribe, do all that good YouTube stuff. I'm gonna try to be back in next Sunday. Peace out.